Is it better to be lucky, good, or consistent? We're going to talk about it today here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short of Welcome Home Financial Partners. We really do appreciate you joining us today. WelcomeHomeFP.com is the website. You can find out more about Ralph, Tim, the rest of the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. Also, set up a time to speak with them right there. WelcomeHomeFP.com, or give a call, 804-635-3550. Begin that complimentary conversation with them. Start that retirement roadmap process. Again, 804-635-3550. My name is Chris Swan, and I'm pleased to be joined by the father-son team behind Welcome Home Financial Partners, Ralph and Tim. Glad to be with you once again. How you doing today?
Doing great, sir. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. I appreciate you guys asking, and appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to spend with the listeners. So I started off with that question, is it better to be lucky, good, or consistent? And I'm talking about a recent study by Charles Schwab that looked at market timing. We've talked about market timing before and how it's next to impossible. It reviewed the S&P 500 over 20 years, and in an experiment, each investor, I'm assuming hypothetical here, was given $2,000. The first one had perfect market timing, investing at the lowest trading point each time. That's why I think it's hypothetical, because we know that's probably next to impossible. Another one had the opposite, terrible market timing, investing at every highest trading point. Another one invested on the first day of every year. Another one invested on the first day of every month. And another one stayed out of the market altogether and put the money in treasuries. In the end, the investor that used dollar cost averaging to put the money in on the first day of every month was only $10,000 behind the one who got it right every single time. Guys, am I missing something, or does this take a lot of the stress out of having money in the market?
Well, I think it could take some stress out, but I think back to those three characteristics, I think it'd be nice to have a combination of them.
Sure.
Right. But yeah, I mean, this has got to be completely hypothetical because nobody's going to have a perfect time. Right. And we talk about it quite a bit as, everybody, and I hate to say it this way, but there's a lot of greed that comes into play. And everybody thinks, hey, if we've gotten to one benchmark that we're always going to get back to it. And that's not the case. Right. So, most people do number two. Number two was the terrible market timing because they invest at the highest trading point. Right. I think we see that quite a bit, whether it's what I just said of, hey, this particular stock was at 200. Now it's down to 150, but I'm just going to hold on just a little bit longer. Yes, I know I'm going to retire tomorrow, but it's going to get back to 200. Once I get to 200, then I'm going to sell and do something a little bit different. And I think that's, but even so, the case study showed that the person that put everything in the treasuries was the worst outcome. And I think, we talk about this quite a bit of everybody looks at treasuries as being the safer investment. And yeah, potentially could be a little less volatile, but there's always going to be something negative about an investment period at the end, right? That's why it's important when we talk to folks is we're not, looking at stock or mutual fund or treasuries. It's, hey, how do we get all of your money to work together? Because your plan's more important than, hey, yes, I got in at the lowest trading point possible. Yes, I sold out at the highest trading point possible. That's not what retirement's going to be about. That's more geared towards the younger generation of people who have to build up their wealth. But yeah, I mean, if you're using dollar cost averaging, it could, help you as far as your stress level is concerned. But at the same side, there's other avenues that you can take to take some of the stress out of your retirement or outside of your portfolio. And I think that's what's really important is not just looking at one particular time or one particular investment, but let's look at your plan, right? Your plan's going to be everything. So if you don't have a plan for retirement, then what are you really doing?
And I think one of the things that people need to understand is, even during the good years of the S&P over the last 20 years, it's averaged around close to 8%, give or take. But what's the average investor? The average investor's around 2%. So that's called not understanding what the market's doing, and you're probably doing exactly opposite of what you need to be doing. You're probably not in the market. You're all of a sudden, everybody's talking to you about how much money they made last year, 25, 35%, and you all of a sudden decide to get into the market. Guess what is that? Time is at the top of the market. And what happens at the top? It usually goes down. And when you go down, what happens? Most people get scared. They're very emotional when it comes to this, particularly in this age of volatility that we have today. I can tell you, in the last year, everybody thought everything was going to be great this year. Now in the last 6 weeks, hey, guess what? It's not so rosy, and people get scared. They don't know what to do, and it's a knee-jerk reaction. That's the worst thing that you can do. So why don't you just take some money that have a plan and continue to do certain things, particularly if you've got a 401k. That's what we're talking about here with dollar cost averaging. Okay. because that's going to allow you to put money into the account without worrying about it, because you're not going to need it until sometime in retirement. But when you get to retirement, guess what? You're going to need some help trying to understand what you need to do. Do you want to protect it, or you just want to let it ride and just continue to grow, and you want it to grow the most and take all the risk? Well, that's fine, but that's not for most people in retirement, because just think about it. If you were going to retire in 2008 and all of a sudden it dropped 50%, how is that going to make you feel? Are you going to be able to retire? Do you want to retire? Or think about it this way. If somebody grabbed 50% of your bank account that you were going to pay your bills with, how's it going to make you feel? You're probably not going to be real happy. Do you agree with that, Chris?
Absolutely. I would be quite unhappy. Joke's on them. They wouldn't get a whole lot, honestly. But I have to wonder, when it comes to risk tolerance, clients or prospective clients that you guys have been working with, do you find that their tolerance changes, not just in light of the past year that we had, but when they're in that retirement red zone and when they're actually in retirement, when you guys let them know more, now if you're compounding withdrawals with a market downturn, it becomes a bigger hole to try to dig your way out of? Or do you help them understand their risk tolerance beforehand so that, it does stay kind of consistent throughout?
Oh, you got to take a look at the retirement red zone. And I think that's probably the most important timing is, hey, if we're 1 year or 5 years away, maybe even possibly 10 years away from retirement, how are our investments? What are they doing? What's the risk tolerance there? Because, we bring up 2008 quite a bit because that was a really bad time, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also other bad times. As of late, 2022 was a bad year in the market, right? Almost 25% down. So if you're going to retire January 1 of 2023 and you still had all your money in the market, you might not have retired. You might still be working currently, or you don't retire the way that you want. And that's not why you work so long, is to retire not on your own terms. I think that's where a lot of people, everybody's going to be a little bit different when it comes to what they want to do in retirement. But I think a lot of people kind of want to live on their own terms, right? You've worked for whatever company, or maybe even yourself. But of course, you'll have clients, or you've got, buyers or whatever that you're technically still working for and providing for. So, retire the way that you like. And, if you say, hey, I'm going to retire in 2 years, I've got some time. Well, how do you know that, right? Because a normal market cycle, we never know what's going to happen as far as that downturn. And there could be multiple, or it could be long lasting. So you've got to make sure that you protect at least part of your portfolio from the market downturn. But that doesn't mean that you can't participate in the gains. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong is, hey, well, if we talk about protection, then I'm not going to make anything. Probably kind of going back to the treasury person, whoever stayed out of the stock market and put all their money in treasuries, they were looking at protection. Well, we know that treasuries aren't going to really perform very well, and it's not going to get you a whole lot of return. A couple of years ago, you probably could have got more money out of a bank. So, depending on what time you're looking to retire, that's where it's more important. Because if we have this conversation with somebody who's 20 years old or 30 years old, it's completely different than somebody who's in their 50s, 60s, 70s, or even 80s, right? So yes, their risk tolerance needs to definitely be reconsidered as they're approaching retirement. So within 5 years of retirement, but also in retirement, because there's going to be different phases of retirement as well. And everybody's got different goals. If you don't care that you don't lose money, and, we've got clients that are in their 80s and they're still all in the stock market, but their tolerance is different. They don't have families. They don't have beneficiaries. They don't have certain things to where, okay, hey, I got $2 million. If I lose half of it, whatever, I'm not going to need it. I don't agree with that philosophy, but their tolerance is going to be different than most people. So yes, we really need to sit down as we're approaching retirement, take a look, see where the investments are, see what your tolerance level is, and reevaluate it, and maybe realign some investments.
As fiduciaries, we're required to make sure we understand what your risk tolerance is. And like for most people, if you're in retirement, you should be thinking a little bit less greed and just say, hey, I want to make sure I've got enough money to live the lifestyle that I want. But also, let me ask you this, Chris. If you just could get 92% of what the average market is doing without any risk, without any situation that you have to worry about, wouldn't that make a better lifestyle for you in retirement, where you didn't have to worry and you could sleep at night and you would know that you got enough money coming in to do the things that you want to do besides pay the bill? That's what it is that we do for people. We allow them to visualize that they are okay in retirement because they have an income plan, and it's a plan that is designed just for them and no one else. And the biggest thing that people need to understand is, yes, if you could make 7 or 8% without any risk, then why not do that instead of getting 10% and all of a sudden you might lose 50% the next year? The number of people that will knee jerk, just like in 2020 with COVID came in, had a lady that had called up and but was beside herself and just saying, hey, listen, I just got to get out. I just got to get out. And we had within 2 days, she came in, and by the time she came in, she had already sold everything that she had in the stock market.
Oh, no.
Well, guess what? That was in March of 2020 at the low end. And by the end of the year, guess what? It was back where it was. But she'd already sold everything. So those are things that we try and help handhold people down the road so you don't make those mistakes.
Yeah, and we see it quite a bit. I mean, a lot of people, I kind of use this philosophy of if you're looking for the next hot stock, right? By the time you've heard of it, it's already too late.
Right.
Not that you can't make some money out of it, but you're not going to get that massive response, if you will. And, we see it where, hey, things are looking good. We'll see it specifically with certain individuals that'll use their retirement accounts that way and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take everything right now. Things aren't going well. There's a lot of uncertainty. Let's take everything out and let's put it into whatever fund, whether it's stable value fund or anything that's not necessarily going to lose anything, but you're not really going to make anything. Well, at the end of the day, no matter who you are, even the great Warren Buffett's going to swing and miss from time to time. And, if you've got all your money sitting in a money market account and then the next 2 weeks we have a massive rebound, well, guess what? You missed out on that. So that's where the plan comes in. It's a little bit different than accumulating the wealth. Now we want to make sure that we can protect that wealth and still participate in the gains because that's what's important. That's how you're going to make money.
And I always tell people money has purpose. So some of the purpose should be for liquidity to pay your bills, do the things you want to do. You don't have to worry about it. Some of it should be long-term investing. So you should have some of your money over here so it can grow for you, but you don't have to worry about it if the market goes down, that you don't have to get to it. Then you've got other things like you're saving for college education or maybe a new car or maybe a vacation home. Those are 3 different purposes of money, and each of them should be just sitting there looking at where should this money be. And not all your money should be in one or the other. It's just What are you trying to do? Where are you going with this money?
You know what they say about putting all of your eggs in one basket. Quite frankly, don't do it. But there is something to be said about having consistent income that is coming in that is perhaps as risk hands off, as risk free as possible. Because we've said many times here, not going backwards, especially in retirement, is more important than consistent gains. You want to make sure that you're not trying to dig yourself out of that hole. And if that covers your monthly expenditures, if it's a guaranteed income source or something that does have a little bit of less risk, sure, it's not going to have maybe the growth potential that just having money straight up in the market is, but you're going to need that money, consistently over the course of your retirement. The power company, the grocery store, they don't care if the market is down. You still have to pay them, what they're charging. But at the same time, there is money that you're not going to be touching for 10, 20 years in retirement. You can think like a younger-minded investor and then finding other things there. If you want to play a little bit and, invest in that hot stock tip that you want. That's completely your prerogative, but having that plan customized and, the percentages of what's going to go where and the risk tolerance, it's going to vary from person to person. And that is why it is a customized retirement plan, that customized retirement roadmap that Ralph and Tim Short create for their clients, for for everyone with them with that retirement roadmap process. It's going to be best suited for them to get them to, through, and beyond retirement. It all begins with that first step, reaching out and scheduling a time to speak with them. 804-635-3550 is how you do that complimentary consultation, no cost, no obligation. 804-635-3550, or going online to the website, welcomehomefp.com. I want to talk about a word you said a minute ago, Ralph, and that was fiduciary. And we've talked about it before, but really take a deeper dive into it for just a second, because it means acting in the client's best interest legally. You guys are held to a standard where you have to act in the client's best interest. And there are people out there who purport themselves to be fiduciaries, but at the same time, they say, oh, I hate annuities, or I hate X, Y, or Z. They don't even entertain the possibility. Is there a disconnect there? Because I feel like if you're acting in the client's best interest, you're going to see, legally, of course, entertain all possibilities, because what might work for one person might be something that you normally don't utilize.
Yeah, I would say to most people, they need to understand that There is no such thing as a perfect investment because each person has different goals. So one person that is so scared of the stock market and just believes in CDs, hey, that's okay for them, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that a lot of people need to be aware of. Just because somebody says it's not good for you, how do they know? Do they know enough about what your risk tolerance is or what your wishes are for the money or the purpose of that money? No, if they just say and you'll see it on TV a lot with some of these big mega box store personalities. Oh, you don't need to do that. That's the worst thing you can do. Well, how do they know that? Do they know what you're trying to do? Probably not, but they know what they're trying to do. They're trying to sell you maybe their version of a retirement plan, or maybe their book, or maybe their course. They're doing something so they can get money because that's their purpose. It's not to know what's best for you because they don't know anything about you. Would you agree with that, Tim?
Oh, absolutely. And Chris, we see it a lot in this industry. There's a lot of people that call themselves, a financial advisor. And I think, before the word fiduciary became a hot term, if people thought you were a financial advisor, they somewhat felt a little bit of comfort there. But at the end of the day, not every person who deems themselves a financial advisor is a fiduciary. And I think it's important to make sure that you are working with a fiduciary. But even that, I had a lady call over one of our TV shows a few weeks ago, and she's been working with somebody. And she goes, now it was a little bit different. When I started with them, her husband passed away in 2022, and she started working with them at that point in time. And she goes, I felt that there was a lot of comfort there. I felt like they had my best interest at heart. And she goes, I can't say that anymore because now I just feel like I'm a number. And that's the reason why she called. And, she's been watching our show now. I think she told me 7 years. We've been on TV now since 2015, right?
Wow.
So there's a lot of people that will, I get calls all the time. Hey, I've been watching your show for years and now I just feel like it's the right time to do this. So it's important to, number one, make sure you are working with a fiduciary, but people will be amazed on how many people in the industry, advisors or professionals or whatever their title looks like, that they're not necessarily fiduciary. So it's important to realize that, if you walk into our doors, we're going to make sure that we've got your best interests at heart and that your plan is going to be tailored to you based off what you need, what you want, and what your aspirations are. And if you walk into somebody who's not a fiduciary, they're trying to sell you something.
Right.
And I think that's where we set ourselves apart because this is what we do. And I think if you're working with somebody local, you've got the accountability factor and you can make sure that you can reach them. And, if you're working with a big box firm, you're probably working with Joe today and then maybe Steven tomorrow, right? So if you call and, when you work with us, the team, you're comfortable with the team and you can reach any of us. And if you're working with somebody else, you might have to, especially if it's a big box, you might have to rebuild that relationship if Joe moved on and now you're working with Steven.
But I would also say, since I've been in this business since 1985, we see a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest change is these people that you talk to over the phone, robo-advisors or just new advisors, whatever, you don't know how long they've been around. Like Tim said, you may be talking to this person today when you call in. How do you know what their credentials are? How do you know how long they've been in? The best thing I can tell people is we've been here since 1985 and we've been in this business. We understand how things go because things will not go all right all the time. You just have to be aware. These are things that we have experience with, and you know who you're talking to when you come into us. We're going to be here for you and through you. Okay.
Yeah. And speaking with the robo-advisors, we see it a bit now that, current employer accounts like 401ks or what have you, you could potentially have an option with one of those firms, the custodian or what have you, that will offer advice to you just for the investment side. So they're not really taking a look at the retirement plan. And, most people, when I say, well, you were doing it for a while now, why did you pass it over? And they're like, well, they're only charging me $30 a month to do so. What's the old phrase, you get what you pay for?
Right.
Right. How's somebody going to give you advice without getting into the weeds with you, without getting into the details and trying to figure out what you're trying to accomplish? So I'm very passionate about the fee conversation because that's what everybody, I think that's kind of their first question most of the time is, hey, what's the fee?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you find the value, and we've said this a million times, if you find the value, and the value should be where you've got a team approach, you've got a team behind you that gets you through retirement to make sure there's no stone that's overturned.
And I would also say a lot of times, particularly in this day and age with the number of layoffs that's occurring within the governments, whether it's state, local, or federal, and maybe some downsizing that might happen, you're really scared at that point in time if you've got that pink slip, what to do. You're not going to get the advice that you might need or a hand holding just by talking to somebody on the phone at the 401k, because the only thing that they care about is just like I had a phone call yesterday with an individual that was trying to roll the money out of their account. And we were on the phone for 15, 20 minutes just with the robo advisor at the other end trying to save the business. And the lady just finally got fed up and just said, this is what we're going to do. So let's just take care of it and move the money. So this person was just trying to save the business for the company, not about what the person wanted to do or why they were doing it. Because if you're leaving work, whether it's because of your choice or not your choice, it's a scary thought because now you don't have a paycheck coming in. So what are you going to do with that retirement income plan?
Yeah, Chris, you said it earlier too, hey, if we bring up a recommendation, say, hey, here's the plan and this is what we're recommending. If they're like, no, we don't want to do all of this or some of this, does the conversation end? No, because we have to adapt. And, I tell everybody that walks in our doors is we work for you. And you'll run into a lot of firms or advisors that, hey, this is what we're going to do, take it or leave it. Well, you know what? It's not our money. It's the client's money. Right. So we work for them. And you got to make sure that you have some relationship there to make sure that, hey, yes, this is what we're recommending. These are the reasons why we're recommending, and these are the different scenarios on why we're recommending this. But at the end of the day, Dad brought up, hey, if somebody wants to put all their money in CDs, that's not the strategy that I recommend, but that's something that we could help with.
Letting them know what it's going to look like. We've talked about Roth conversions many times on the show. Yes, if they wanted to convert, $100,000, $500,000, that was their prerogative. Okay, but letting them know, hey, this is what it's actually going to cost you right now if you do this all at once. There are other ways to go about it. If they, if they decide, hey, okay, I see that and I understand that, but or the people who have the large balances in their accounts that it's not really doing anything for them, but if it provides a comfort level to them and that's what makes them feel better at the end of the day, you've done your due diligence, for lack of a better term, letting them know, educating them, acting in their best interest, and then. But you're right. At the end of the day, it is their money. If the listeners out there, it is your money. It is your plan. But you want something that is going to be customized for you and hopefully, put together by a team that is acting in your best interest and not in their own best interest. That is what you get. That fiduciary standard, acting in your best interest with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, with Ralph Short, with Tim Short. So I encourage you, if you've been, doing it by yourself this whole time, or if you've been working with, your 401k administrators, which means you're kind of been doing it by yourself this whole time, or, you want to just get a second set of eyes on your plan to see if there's anything that can really be changed to improve your prospects in retirement. I encourage you to get to know Ralph and Tim Short. Reach out, 804-635-3550, 804-635-3550, or go to the website, find out more about them there, and then reach out and contact them then, welcomehomefp.com. As always, we appreciate you joining us, spending part of the day here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Hope you stay safe out there. Gentlemen, appreciate the time as always. And as we wrap up, I do want to leave you with the final word.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And we appreciate your time as well. But, we've talked a lot about of uncertainty and, a whole lot of change going on, estate planning, Roth conversions. These things are very important and can be very important for your retirement plan. So, if anything you heard today kind of struck a nerve, if you will, give us a call. We'd love to see what kind of value we can provide for you. We bring you into the office and we can create your very own retirement roadmap. But pick up the phone, give us a call, visit the website, attend one of the First Friday events. We'd love the opportunity to meet with you. So we want to thank everybody for listening and take care.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.